Good morning, guys. We are still talking about geometry. Today we're going to talk about area of a composite figure. So a composite figure is just a figure that is composed of different shapes. So we're going to go over a couple of examples. The examples on your homework look a little bit different than what we're going to go over, but you would use the same strategy to solve them. So looking at this first example and kind of opening question, it says, home plate on a baseball field is a shape composed of a rectangle and a triangle, and then it's asking what is the area. So you need to remember your area formulas that we've talked about. So we've talked about parallelograms, which is what a rectangle falls under, triangles, trapezoids. We've talked about circles as well. There won't be any circles on this, but keep in mind of parallelograms and specifically triangles. So looking at this, I have two shapes. So what I'm going to do is find the area of both of those shapes. So this would be shape 1 and this is shape 2. So I need to find the area of both of them individually, and then I'm going to add those two answers together to find my total area. So for my rectangle, I have 17 as my base, and my height is 8.5. So for the area of my rectangle, and again, you guys can use a calculator on this. I'd rather your answers be correct because you used a calculator than struggle with just multiplying everything together. So when you multiply 17 and 8.5, you get 144.5. So that is the area of this shape. And then for the area of my triangle, I have 1/2 my base of my triangle, since this is the distance and it's the same right here, the base is going to be 17 as well. So I have 1/2 times 17 times 8.5 for my triangle. The 12 and some numbers are going to be misleading to you. That's kind of just how these questions work. They give you numbers, so you are paying attention and making sure that you're using the correct one. So remember, the height is this. This slanted line is never the height. You don't use that in anything. So this 12 you don't actually need. So my area of my triangle was 1/2 times 17 was the base, and then times 8.5. So I'm going to multiply that together. So 1/2 or 0.5 times 17 is 8.5 times another 8.5 is 72.25. So I have this area and I have this area. And then I'm going to add the two of those together. So 72.25 plus 144.5 gives me a total of 216.75, and this was in inches, and it's going to be squared. Okay. So kind of just finding the area of individual shapes and then adding them together. So looking at, I'm going to look at two other examples. So this is actually a shape where you are going to, instead of decomposing it, you're kind of composing it and then going to subtract a little bit. So there's an example on your homework like this. So this is why I wanted to go over one of them. So if you look at the bigger picture on this shape, so this whole thing, So if you look at the entire shape in the entirety, so I'm finding the area of the shaded part, but I'm going to find the area of the whole thing and then actually just subtract the triangle in a second because it's a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do is break this in half. So I have a shape that ultimately looks like this. So it's really a triangle and a rectangle. We'll worry about this part in a second to subtract that. So finding the area of this bottom rectangle, it has a height of 6. And then if this is 6 and this is 6, this whole thing would be 12. So my base, or my rectangle, would be 12 times 6. 12 times 6 is 72, so that would be the rectangle on the bottom. And then this triangle on the top, again, like the last example, I don't know what this line is that I just drew, but if the bottom is 12 and this is the same length, this is going to be 12 as well. So I have my triangle is 12, and then the height is going to be this straight line. So if I drew the line right here and I know this is 6, then this part is 6. And if the total of this is 12, this part would be 6 as well. So 6 plus 6 would give me 12. So kind of like right here as well. So I had this part was 6 and this part was 6, but the entire thing is 12. So the entire thing was 12. This part was 6, which means the other half needs to be 6. So the triangle is going to be 1/2 times a base of 12 times a height of 6. So 1/2 times 12 is 6, or 12 divided by 2 is 6, and then 6 times 6 is 36. So I'm going to add these together really quick. So I have 6 plus 2 is 8, and then 7 plus 3 is 10. But that's not the area. That is the area of this entire thing. But what I need to do is now take away this part, because this part is not shaded. So what I'm going to do is find the area of that triangle. So, and then subtract it. So since it's not a shaded part, I'm going to subtract it. So I have 1/2, my base was 12, I found that earlier, and then my height is right here, it's labeled as 6. So I have 1/2 times 12, which again is just divided by 12, and then 6 times 6 is 36. So it's actually kind of just taking away the other triangle. So if I have 108 minus 36, I get 72 as my final answer. It doesn't tell you what the unit is, but you can just put 72 U for units and then squared. So these are a little bit more complicated. So you're finding the area of the entire shape and then subtracting the non-shaded part. So I know this kind of worked out to where this and this are both 36. It's not always going to be that easy. So just pay attention to the question that you are working on. Okay. And then looking at one last example. So I have a shape that looks like this. What I'm going to do is to divide this into 3 different rectangles. And what I'm actually going to do is divide it right here and right here. But before I can do anything, I need to figure out the height and the base, or the length and the width of each one. So this rectangle right here, it already tells me the side is 7, and then the width is 3. So this rectangle, I'm going to label it as rectangle 1, is going to be 7 times 3. Then this rectangle, I know this is 12, but I need to find this length right here. So I can do that multiple ways. There are kind of 2 ways that I can look at it. If I know this entire piece, I'm gonna keep switching colors. If I know this entire piece is 15 and this part right here is 10, I could subtract and find that this is 5. You could also do it on the other side right here. So the entire piece is 12. This piece right here is 7. 7 from 12 is also 5. So this, I'm going to label it number 2, would be 12 times 5 to find the area. And then the third shape right here, it's already labeled. So the 15 is not for this. The 10 is the length of this side. And then the width or height is 3. So then I'm going to multiply them. So for the first one, I have 7 times 3 is 21. Then for the second one, I have 12 times 5 is 60. I'm going to write that over here so I can line them up when I add. And then 10 times 3 gives me 30. So I'm adding those 3 things. So 0 and 0 and 1 is 1. 6 plus 2 is 8. Plus 3 is going to give me 11. So this would be 111 meters squared. Okay. So I would strongly suggest actually using your workbook page to break down the shape. Use different colors if you need to use different colors to find different shapes. There's an example or there's a question in your homework, and I'm not going to go over it, but there's an example in your homework that looks like this. I would strongly suggest composing it back together and making it a whole shape, and then subtracting the 2 triangles from the end. So find the area of the whole, so the rectangle, and then subtract the 2 triangles. That's probably the easiest way to go about that question. So just to kind of help you on that, make sure you are not overthinking it, not stressing about multiplying correctly. Use a calculator. I'd rather your answers be correct mathematically. I'm more concerned about you guys knowing how to break down, so decompose or compose the shapes in order to find the area of them. But if you have questions, please let me know before you guys do your homework. I will be more than happy to help you. And I hope you have a great rest of the day and rest of the week. Bye, guys.